Live from the Business RadioX studio inside Renaissance Bank, the bank that specializes in understanding you. It's time for North Fulton Business Radio.
And hello again, everyone. Welcome to another edition of North Fulton Business Radio. I'm John Ray, and folks, we are broadcasting from inside Renaissance Bank in beautiful Alpharetta. And if you're looking for a bank that is at the top of the surveys conducted by of customer surveys conducted by Forbes, by Time Magazine's Money.com, well, Renaissance Bank shows up there. And I think they show up there because they're big enough to handle pretty much any need you can throw at them, but they're small enough to do it in a personal way. And that's a hard combination to find in these days of mega banks. And if you're at one of those banks, you know what I mean. So go to renaissancebank.com and find one of their local offices and give them a call. I think you'll be glad you did. Renaissance Bank, understanding you, member FDIC. And now we've got a special show today. We have got officials from the Community Foundation of Northeast Georgia. We are delighted to welcome DePriest Waddy. He's the president and CEO of the organization. Maria Sullivan, she is Chief Development Officer, and then board member, Scott Jordan. All three of them are with us today, so we're excited to have all three of you. And Scott's day job is Pinnacle Financial. I've got to mention that and give a shout out to Pinnacle Financial, right, Scott? Okay.
Appreciate that.
Awesome. But welcome to all three of you.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Yeah. DePriest, why don't you give an overview of the Community Foundation of Northeast Georgia and how you're serving out there?
Well, I've been CEO for the Community Foundation for a little bit less than a year now, and I've been in this nonprofit space for about 30 years. So I've seen some really, really great things that communities have done on behalf of its citizens. And I've seen some hard work that still needs to be done. And so at the pinnacle of this, the Community Foundation for Northeast Georgia has been in existence for 35 years. And at our core, we always say that we connect people who care with causes that matter. So in order to have people who care, obviously there is a business element to this. And through a portfolio of donor advised funds, we help our clients to develop what we call a charitable checkbook. So they're not giving money to the Community Foundation. It's actually their assets that they're converting to their charitable checkbook for philanthropy. And we advise them on how to get the best return on investment out of those dollars in the community for causes that they really, really care about.
Yeah. We were talking before we came on that people hear the word foundation and they immediately recoil, because they think that's stuffy, snobby. I don't have enough assets for a foundation. Respond to that.
Well, anytime you use a technical word like a foundation, that's generally saying that I've got to meet a lot with my family and I've got to have a lot of red tape when it comes to, working with my tax advisor on how not to get entangled with the IRS and all those kinds of things that push people away from the table.
Sure.
And so we make it very, very easy because we serve as the back office to many, many families and organizations who really don't want that red tape. Mm-hmm. They want to be able to serve their communities philanthropically. They want to be able to voice the interests of where those dollars are going to make a charitable difference. And then they leave all that back office work to us. And so it comes down to this, I'm going to give dollars away every year to my favorite charities. Some I know, some I don't know. Many come to me through people that I know or friends of friends. Mm-hmm. And so, we're coming up on tax season right now. I just met with my accountant and, I had to scrounge around for receipts and letters and I gave this to this organization, that organization. Well, with my charitable checkbook through the Community Foundation, I've got a portal that I can go through or I can call my representative at the Community Foundation and say, hey, I want X number of my charitable dollars to go to XYZ organization. And all of that is logged in our portal. And so at the end of the year, we give you a printout of everybody you've given to. And by the way, you've already received that tax deduction up front. And all you got to do is show evidence of your donor advised fund. And and the beauty of it is I don't have to spend all those dollars on my charities in a year. I can let them sit there and grow. And some folks who really took advantage of the stock market doing very, very well over the past 5-7 years, they started with something as simple as $10,000. And now their charitable credit is up to like $50,000, $60,000. And just think of the good that can do for nonprofits in a community.
Yeah.
And so, we're sitting on, let's just take last year off the table because I think everybody took a haircut last year. So we're sitting on about $80 million in assets, either with family funds or agency funds, organizations that, want to grow an endowment and they want us to manage those dollars for a rainy day in case there's something that they want to invest in, a capital campaign or a roof or a building. And they want us to manage those dollars so that those dollars could grow over time. And so we work with them on these causes and the things that they really, really are interested in. And if it's something that they are not aware of, but they have a sector like homelessness that they're interested in, or clean water, or nature, or trees, then we know where to go to because we've got a team of researchers with boots on the ground, and we know what those good causes are. Yeah. And that's when Scott and the board come into play as well, because we've got 50 board members that are, titans of industry and leaders in the community, and they help us to develop this Rolodex of information so that we can help our communities grow and be stronger.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Now let's just break it down for those. And apparently, again, we were talking about this before we came on. Apparently the knowledge out there of what a donor advised fund is pretty low. So let's walk through the exactly what that is. Maria, you want to take that?
Sure, with Scott's help.
Okay. Okay. Well, bring it on in.
But, a donor advised fund, as we'd talked before we started this, and about 1% of the population we speak to even know what that is. And that is an individual that wants to create, as DePriest said, a philanthropic foundation, a fund, and then that's something we manage. But, Scott could probably speak a little clearer to that as in detail as far as how that can impact your pocketbook.
Yeah, for sure. So, my wife and kids and I, we have our own donor advised fund with a community foundation. And I, like, ironically, many financial professionals knew what it was, but didn't necessarily know how it worked, nor how effective it was, or how efficient it was, even from a tax understanding prior to establishing that. So, I, went around for years going, I know what a DAF is generically. I'd never engaged with one directly until I became a board member. And, one of the cool things to DePriest's comments earlier is what I learned is they're very approachable. Many people could actually open one. There's not, a significant wealth requirement to have that. And, as we got into it, probably the DePriest commentary is the life efficiency we gained from not having to track receipts and credit cards and cash and all the things we were doing to give. And that also let us hone in on the themes that we like to give to a little bit better, and probably cool benefit kind of looking forward as I'm getting a little bit older is road mapping philanthropy with our children that are becoming old enough to understand what that is now. And I think, probably for us, we do a great job of being an educational steward to the community, both for individuals who might be seeking philanthropic avenues, as well as those agency partners that they might need connections to. So yes, definitely to Maria's comment, very misunderstood, I think the DAF is. And the foundation is the thing everybody's heard of, but those seem like, Arthur Blank or Bernie Marcus, or I could never be that, that type of person. Whereas a DAF, definitely a lot more approachable tool that we probably need to spend more time educating the world on.
Which is why we're here, right? So we're educating as we talk here, hopefully, for folks out there. But just to be clear, because people think taxes when it comes to their charitable contributions, but DePriest, you alluded to this, but you set up the fund, and whatever you put in the fund immediately is tax deductible, regardless of whether you give any of that away immediately or not. Correct?
That is correct. So, it's interesting. Just like at the end of the tax year, before the clock strikes midnight, everybody is cleaning out their closets and packing up the car to take things to Goodwill and make those charitable deductions. The same type of inventory can be done with your assets. So we've got some of our fund holders who use IRAs that are sitting there just kind of dormant. 60%, between 60 and 65% of your of which you can contribute in a given year could be based on your adjustable gross income and can be deductible. And then 30%, if you want to, give art or cars, we've got folks who've, had some land that have just been sitting there and they want to get a tax deduction off the land. Mineral rights, we're working with a number of individuals who have mineral rights that is part of their portfolio. So, just like you're, taking your old clothes and closets and furniture, down the Salvation Army or Goodwill, you can take an inventory of your assets as well and really put those to good use, not only from a taxable advantage, but also giving back to the community over time. And I had a buddy recently, he's a very successful entrepreneur, and his wife is a surgeon in Atlanta. And we talked in February, and I asked him, I said, I'm at the Community Foundation now. I want you and your wife to consider a donor advised fund. And he's like, what's that? And I'm like, you don't know what that is? And he said, well, I need to take out one today because I got to pay a lot of money for 2022. And I said, well, I can't help you in 2022. I said, we would have had to have talked December 31st before midnight, which is our busiest season, as you can imagine.
I'll bet.
I mean, we're open 24/7 for folks who really have been enlightened about this, and they're coming, up to the stroke of midnight to get those donor advised funds done. But I'm going to take care of him and his wife for 2023 for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, that's when the drive-in window is open, right? I mean,
exactly right.
You've got them lined up around the corner. But so, and if people want that immediate deduction, they come in December of a certain year, then they don't, there's a lot of angst around getting that in and so forth. So they get the tax deduction, but they don't have to worry about deciding where it goes.
Correct.
Right. And which is the normal kind of angst at the end of a year. It's like, I need tax deductions. Where am I going to give it? And you may make decisions that you are not bad decisions, but you wish you'd have made a different decision later in the heat of the moment, right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
They bought themselves some time.
Yeah.
And the time is really up to them. I mean, they can let the dollar sit there for years and it'll grow. Or they may have, some things that they really want to take care of in that upcoming several months. And sometimes, they'll want to put together a scholarship institute, for their alma mater or their kids' schools or their churches. Many folks tithe directly out of their donor advised funds, and they advise us as to how they want to distribute those dollars to the church. The advantage is, and we have and we have legacy funds. So we have individuals who have decided as to what they want their dollars to do after they've left this earth. And so they'll come to us and they'll say, hey, I want X number of dollars to go to my kids, but I want the corpus of my estate to go to the Community Foundation, and I've got 10 charitable organizations that I want to send these dollars to. But by the way, let's just say after I leave this earth, some of these organizations, go through a rough patch, or they close, or, they go through a period of mismanagement. Then I've got a safety net because we make sure that those organizations have fiscal responsibility and accountability before those funds are distributed. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a huge value. I want to come back to that, but what, in just talking about the donor advised fund, again, for just a moment, Fidelity was a big leader in this in terms of getting this segment going. Talk about how the value that you give your fund holders versus, I won't name them individually, but just the bigger, financial institutions that have set these up. Fidelity's not the only one. The advantages that you give your fund holders. Sure.
So, we're not going to pick on Fidelity because it's a great organization.
Sure.
Many of our banks now have donor advised funds. Mm-hmm. The advantage we have is twofold. So first of all, we work with nonprofits to help them to become stronger. Mm-hmm. A couple of weeks ago, we had a nonprofit academy where we hosted about 200 nonprofit leaders to talk about things around infrastructure, post-COVID, management and leadership. We had a panel of experts to talk about fiscal responsibility of nonprofits and fatigue and how to hold on to employees. These are things that a lot of, community organizations who have donor advised funds, that's the other side of the fence that, many of them really don't see, and how in making a community stronger, you're making your nonprofit stronger as well. And so what we strive to do is not only to have the assets to invest in the community, but to make sure that there's a pipeline of social responsibility with those organizations that are receiving those funds. And we invite our fund holders to come and join and network with our nonprofits periodically so that they can learn who's doing really innovative things in the community that they may not have known about and they might want to invest in. We have a number of organizations that are focusing on special needs students. We have a number of organizations that are focusing on workforce development. Tomorrow, we're actually hosting a World Peace and Unity Revival where we're placing a statue at Rodney Cook Senior Peace Park in Atlanta. And one of our fund holders commissioned the statue to be placed there and had the vision, he and his wife, to tee up 1 billion prayers around the world. And I'm actually chairing that event.
Wow.
And, that has brought into that particular fund, close to $1 million to support that movement. And so we're going to be hosting thousands of folks there tomorrow. And so, that's just how communities support each other and how we, make good on the philanthropy of others for the greater good of the world.
Yeah. And one of the things that you said earlier, DePriest, that strikes me is how you work. I mean, you mentioned the Nonprofit Academy, but just how you work with nonprofits generally to help. And you've got, as you said, an extensive background here, but how you work with them generally to make them stronger. And this is something that maybe they're doing it and I don't know about it, but I don't think the big financial institutions are doing any of that, right? I mean, it's really more of a transactional kind of situation, and as opposed to like getting down into the weeds in the local community and helping the nonprofits that we all know about around here.
I think some companies are more fiscally responsible when it comes to community development than others. Mm-hmm. I think that there's still a long continuum of information that needs to be put out of there because there's a reciprocity here. So, businesses want to thrive in communities, but then they also want to tackle some of the tough problems so that communities can get better. Well, the delta in that is how do you galvanize and support the nonprofits that are serving the underserved in those communities, and how do you give them the resources that they need in order to do that? And that's where community foundations come in like ours, because we typically are addressing the delta, and we help inform organizations, typically corporations, around where those sweet spots are, that if you invest a few bucks, your return on investment is going to be extremely great. And so having the nonprofits at the table oftentimes is an afterthought, and we promote their voices being at the table on the forefront so that, money isn't wasted.
Yeah, I love that. Folks, we're here chatting with DePriest Waddy, Maria Sullivan, and board member Scott Jordan, all of the Community Foundation of Northeast Georgia. Maria, I want to pull you in on something, and that relates to financial advisors, that folks out there that say, oh, well, I've got a financial advisor that helps me, figure this stuff out. How do you work in concert with financial advisors?
Excuse me. We have we call it the Professional Network Advisor Group. and they are our financial advisors. It's a team of people, and we are continuously growing. Scott happens to be, helping us with that.
Yeah.
So I'll plug him in too. But what we do is we really, it's our bread and butter. I mean, they have clients that are philanthropic or may know of people that may want to be included in the community foundation. And so they really are, we connect to them for those types of clients and those types of philanthropists. Is there anything you might want to add? Scott is a financial advisor, so I'm going to ask. Yes, you are on both sides.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think, most people, most business owners have kind of a cadre of advisors around them that are always, leaning in on various areas. The cool thing of this is, we try to bring those people into the fold and educate them on not only who we are and how a donor advised fund works, but also to help streamline the advice piece of where should I deploy the money. And a lot of advisors, myself included, probably if I go back several years ago when I wasn't serving on boards as much or, as active as a volunteer, I would still get asked periodically, where do you give your money? Or what do you think is the best homeless organization? And, I live in Cumming, work in North Fulton. And, I cannot always answer that fluently. So I think, even myself, being a board member and part of the PAN, I've had the luxury now of being exposed to a wider array of organizations. So when a client asks me about how should I give, maybe it starts, I'd like to save on taxes. And by the way, I'm not a tax advisor, so got that on record.
The appropriate disclosure, right?
Yeah.
And I probably have my wealth officer next to me who is able to talk about these things. But, we will advise them on that element. But then the cool part is to be able to translate that to, but let's be responsible the way you give out the funds. And please be sure that it doesn't end with the donation into the DAF and that it is just the beginning of the journey. And then the journey to advise that client along the giving life cycle, I think is really critical. And as I mentioned earlier, a lot of us know what a DAF is generically and don't know how it works and don't know how to make that connection. So for those that aren't maybe like me who want to go really deep into that, it's also a good baton toss. It's like, I don't understand this, but my friends at the Community Foundation do. So go talk to Maria, go talk to DePriest. They'll connect you. They'll get you set up and they'll get you introduced to good organizations.
It occurs to me, and I don't want to make a bunch of trust departments mad at me, but but it occurs to me that what you offer your when it comes to a legacy situation like what you described, DePriest, you offer a much more informed way to distribute funds over many, many years after someone's passing, because as opposed to, and again, nothing, I used to work in a trust department, nothing against trust departments, but they do not have the bandwidth to be able to do what you do. And that's not their fault. They're not able to get in and understand what's going on in the community. So like you say, Scott, they can keep up with who is, maybe a newer homeless related organization that has come on and doing great work that has all that's happened after someone's passing that you can identify, right? For example, just using one example.
Well, it's interesting. So I'm a big Beverly Hillbillies fan, right? So I remember the episode where Granny got the wheelbarrow and she was going to go to the bank because they made her upset. They wouldn't take her call. So she went down to the bank with her wheelbarrow and she wanted all her millions in the wheelbarrow. And so some of our fund holders I talk to every day.
Yeah.
I mean, and I talk to them all over the country. And they just want to tell me, where their sensibilities are around philanthropy, or they may see something in the newspaper that might be alarming and they want to run it past me, or they may hear of something new and different that's going on around workforce development. Right now there's a lot of insecurity around, working moms having transportation and being able to get to work, and they want to solve some of these problems. And so, you generally are not going to call your financial advisor at some of your banks and say, hey, where should I invest these dollars? Because they're not going to know where. Generally, they're not going to know where unless they're really plugged in.
Right.
So we're kind of that one-stop shop because we're going to help them figure it out and ease the tension around what's going on with them, present day. Obviously, it's fairly easy to open up a donor advised fund if we're opening a slew of them on December 31st. So, I mean, it typically takes 15, 20 minutes to make it legitimate. And then, if you got a check in hand, then we just want to have it on record as of, midnight on the 31st so that you can take it to your accountant. And so we make ourselves very, very accessible, not only to, the fund holder, but also to the nonprofits, because a lot of them are not really up to date on the nuances around, how businesses work and how they can be extremely effective and, enforce economies of scale. A lot of them are still operating like they did 20 years ago, and we know that environment is constantly changing. So we're hearing it through both lenses, and we're helping to, negotiate in the middle.
Yeah. That I love that. And just to be clear, I want to draw this out and underline this. One way you work with nonprofits is to help them create an endowment fund that otherwise they might, because of their size maybe, or whatever the reason, they might not otherwise be able to have.
That's right. Money goes further, faster when it grows in a large pool. A nonprofit with, $10, $15, $20, $50,000, yes, they could open up an account. They could put an investment portfolio together. But when you are putting it with other nonprofit dollars and it's in an aggregate of money of millions of dollars, and our investment advisor group is the Capital Group, and Hayes Evans does a phenomenal job managing our portfolio. And, they manage trillions of dollars. And so when you've got somebody in real time investing your dollars so that those dollars can grow, then you want to be part of that team. Yeah.
Wow. Such great work. The Community Foundation of Northeast Georgia, DePriest Waddy, Maria Sullivan, Scott Jordan. DePriest, is there anything we've missed that we need to make sure we cover? Maria's raising her hand. Come on in here.
I have something I'd like to add.
Yeah, please.
A little bit of everything. So this is kind of going to be like the smorgasbord right here.
Yeah.
To DePriest's point, as far as, the agencies we work with, the nonprofits, we're a convener. I mean, we're finding that, and I think nonprofits would agree, we're not working in collaboratively and working together. We are that convener. We're putting organizations together, or if we're the research side of it. And so we do get a lot of calls looking for a grant writer. We're looking for some need that we may have access to because we work with other nonprofits. So that's benefit. And I think that's really, really valuable to a nonprofit. And to DePriest's point, the Nonprofit Academy really kind of showed us that we aren't working well together. And so I think we're really trying to do that. And then on the donor advice side, the individuals, the one thing that I think is really important, I think in this day and age, is that parents are struggling to work strongly with their kids or showing about giving. I mean, we're so isolated anymore in that I don't know that families think about, gosh, how do I teach my children about philanthropy? And I had a conversation with someone the other day, and that they give each child $1,000 and says, okay, what is your heart speaking to you? So it teaches them the long-term effect of that. And so in second and third generation benefit from that type of thinking. And that's what we also do, is help them think that way, where it's different when you open an account at Fidelity, and I hate using Fidelity because I'm not picking on them, but you had mentioned that. And that I don't know they have that capability to share what's in the community, what's going on, and all the resources that we provide, and helping, families grow.
Yeah. Well, and again, we're not picking on anybody, but we're just making the point that, hey, it's a big financial institution that's not their role, and they've never represented that's their role, right? You're saying, hey, this is our role. We embrace this and we fulfill this mission, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I want to break it down too from another perspective. I think that there's always this misconception that, families who have the privilege to open a donor advised fund or families who have foundations, that they're isolated from the world's problems. We've had some families that have been really, really blessed financially, and they've contacted us to give them some information with nonprofits that could support their kids or their families, because we do have families that are dealing with special needs children. We have families that are dealing with mental health issues. We have families that have geriatric issues with aging parents. And we have families, unfortunately, that are dealing with divorce. And so when you kind of break it down beyond a wealth factor, this information is applicable to everybody. So our ears are to the ground, not only for the underserved, but for the mass majority of community as well.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because we weren't going to necessarily really talk about this, but I'm going to bring it up if you don't mind, because actually you and I a long time ago had a conversation about this, which you may or may not remember, but just the need that exists in the, I'll call it the northern arc of Metro Atlanta, is under-recognized by many, many people, right? Whether it comes to homelessness, hunger, aging in place, opioids,
suicide.
thank you, suicide, mental health issues generally. These are rapidly rising, in some cases, issues and concerns that a lot of people just don't have, just walking around, don't have knowledge of, that you do. And you can help people educate donors, and maybe they can make since they have that education and that knowledge, can make a better decision for themselves in terms of where they put their money.
Exactly.
Yeah, and one of the things I think we talk about when you find somebody that maybe isn't naturally philanthropic, which is actually not uncommon, given what you're talking about, is sometimes you have to put it in an economic development sense, is that, you love the community you live in, you want it to be successful, you want your wealth and your assets to grow, and all that's important. But if the whole community doesn't go up at some improved level, then that's in jeopardy to some degree. And I think, especially for legacies, I think of my children, if they don't help us solve this problem, it becomes worse. But I mean, we have virtually I hate to say invisible poverty up the 400 corridor, but it is quasi-invisible. People go, we don't have homelessness here, or what are you talking about? People can't get from their house to the grocery store. I mean, it is an interesting educational moment, I think, that's maybe exacerbated in this community because of our extreme affluence. And I like I said, I live in Forsyth County. I work in North Fulton. I think that theme is common in both of those communities. And I'm shocked sometimes at dinner parties with my friends that are all good intentioned, that just don't understand what's around them. Their kids go to school with kids that can't afford to eat.
Right. Well, we're not trying to shame anybody here. But, Homestretch did a survey years ago, and I'm sure the percentages are somewhat similar, that they did a survey of folks in North Fulton that said 92% of folks surveyed did not think homelessness is a problem. Well, in North Fulton, that's part of the problem, right? Just the fact that people don't know. So the education that you do is fantastic. So thank you for that. Thank you for that, that work. And wow, this has been a great conversation.
John, thank you for having us. This has been very, very insightful. Yeah. I know that we've unpacked a lot here today.
Yeah, we've laid a lot of given people a lot to think about, right?
But at the end of it, we want to be accessible to those folks who really want to make a difference, and want to help them along the way as they make their decisions around philanthropy and what to do with it. And so we want to make sure that you can reach out to us at any time.
Well, that's the most important question and answer. That we're going to get to that right now. I want to give people directions on how they can find out more, how they can connect, and learn more about how they might be able to participate. So, DePriest, why don't you lead off on that.
Well, I'm going to be really bold, so I'm going to be bold and audacious. You can have my personal cell phone number.
There you go.
It's 404-358-2516. You could call or text me, or you can email me. My first initial last name, D Waddy, DWADDY at CF as in Frank, N as in Nancy, E as in Edward, G as in Gloria.org. So D Waddy at CFNEG.org.
And if you're shy, you can and don't want to call DePriest directly first, you can go check out the website. Okay, is CFNEG.org.
That's correct.
Terrific. DePriest Waddy, Maria Sullivan, and Scott Jordan, thanks to all of you for joining. This has been fabulous. Thank you so much for coming in, and thanks for your great work. We're delighted we can honor and celebrate that work.
Thank you. May I add one more thing?
Bring it on.
I'm always like the end.
Yeah.
We are considered, we've been in Gwinnett County for a long time.
Yeah.
We are really making a huge impact in North Fulton, and I know this is primarily for North Fulton. And so I'm available, and I'm visible. We have a conference room at the chamber in North Fulton. So, anything we can do in the North Fulton and Forsyth counties, just, call DePriest.
Terrific.
Cell phone.
Yeah.
Start right now.
That's right. That's right. You can go straight to DePriest, straight to the top. So that's great. Thanks for adding that.
And we love speaking to groups too. So if you ever want to book us to come and speak to your group, whether it's your family or your employees or your business associates, we're more than happy to do that.
Terrific. Great. Again, great work. The Community Foundation of Northeast Georgia. Thank you, DePriest, Maria, and Scott. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. Yeah. Hey, folks, just a quick reminder. If you've got some dysfunction in your back office of your business, that may be administrative task. It may be that your bookkeeping consists of a Nike shoebox. That may be a problem. If you've got some issues like that are dragging you down, Office Angels can help you. They've got a whole team of angels that have all the talents and experience necessary to fly in, get that dysfunction ironed out, and fly out. And they do it on an ongoing or as-needed basis. Now, the chief executive angel over there is Essie Escobedo. She's fantastic. I know this because I work with her, and I know what they do and what they do for me. You can call Essie at 770-442-9246, or if you're shy, again, go to officeangels.us and check them out first. But go ahead and call Essie, and I think you'll be glad you did, and let her know that we sent you. And just a thank you to our audience, you, our listener. You are fantastic, because here's one thing that you do specifically that helps us help the guests that we have on this show. You share the show. You've done that traditionally and consistently over this almost 7 years we've done this show, and we appreciate you and your support. So if you could continue to do us a favor by sharing the show when you see that as appropriate. And I can't imagine that there aren't some folks that need to hear about the great work of the Community Foundation of Northeast Georgia that you could think of. So help us shine the light on great business and community leaders that are doing great work in this community as we continue to be the voice of business in North Fulton. So for my guests, DePriest Waddy, Maria Sullivan, and Scott Jordan, my name is John Ray, and join us next time here on North Fulton Business Radio.